To this consultation process. It's a very important process of the budget. This is an opportunity for us to just set out what are the key inputs to preparing the budget. It's also a chance for the community to ask some questions, get some information out of us with regards to what we plan to do or the services we plan to deliver in the next year. So in terms of the format today, I'll be presenting the operational budget. Director Infrastructure Services, Renee Wallace, will be presenting the capital works budget. And we've also got the manager, major projects, Graham, here to assist us. I'll let the councillors do their own introductions, and I'll ask Madam Mayor to do the official welcome to country and some opening remarks, and then I'll just run through the format of this afternoon. Is that all right?
Thank you. And Lindsay, where's the best place for me to stand so I'm live stream? Anyway, up here? Okay. Well, I'd like to kick off on acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Kalkadoons, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. But I'd also like to extend that respect to any First Australians here in the room today. Thank you very much for either tuning in to this live stream or coming along in person to this draft budget. What I would like to say is that staff have spent a lot of hours and a lot of time and energy putting this budget together, and ultimately the responsibility lies on councillors. So I just would remind if people do have comments, just remember, be mindful that the budget has been put together on the direction and the complete direction of councillors. I'm really happy that everyone has come along today, and I'd like the councillors to give them the opportunity now to have a chat and also talk about themselves. So we'll kick off with the Deputy Mayor.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming along. Part of my portfolio is to oversee the administration and the finances, so I'm fairly keen to see this budget go through community consultation and then be approved before the end of this year. We do have a lot of scrutiny of our finances and our budget in each given year by the Queensland Audit Office, and also QTC have a great deal of input, which is the Queensland Treasury Corporation, in maintaining an oversight of our finances and to make sure that council remains in a strong and healthy position. I'd just like to add there that there are a lot of councils in Queensland that are struggling, and they have a lot of red flags on them, and that's a recent report from the Queensland Treasury Corporation that's put that out, and Mount Isa clearly has a couple of indicators there that's where we haven't achieved surpluses in the last couple of years. So we are pretty bent on trying to maintain a healthy budget, but also to get to a surplus position at the end of 2023. That's June. Thanks. So we have a very, very heavy interest in this particular budget this year, as we always do, but this one is we're trying to turn the corner a bit for Mount Isa. Thanks. That's me. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor George Fortune, 10th year with Mount Isa City Council as a councillor. One of the major roles for a councillor to do in council is to participate and develop budgets from year to year, and our role is to look into the future and make sure that the community of Mount Isa City Council, is sustainable into the future, and all the deliberations and also deliver projects and items of community interest. So all of the work that's gone into developing the budget has gone through a process of all of the councillors, and input from all the councillors, and also questions and answers from the staff put together the budget. This part of it, the community consultation, is a very important part of it, where we get feedback from the community. And we welcome your comments tonight. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, Councillor Fortune. Councillor Coghlan. I was about to say Tully, but yeah. Coghlan.
Councillor Kim Coghlan here, in charge of Parks and Gardens, Youth Portfolio, Splashes, Family Fun Park and the Cemetery, This is my second term as a councillor. Very happy with the work that our department has done on the budget. I know they've spent a lot of hours giving us the information. And just on closing, I know Councillor McRae gave her apologies today. She's at a prior engagement. Councillor Stretton's on holidays, he's on leave, but Councillor Tully was hoping to attend, but something has come up urgently, so he's attending to that. So he is going to still try and be here, but at the moment he can't be here.
Thank you, councillors. I'll just go straight into the presentation, and I'll start with an overview of the key highlights of our budget, or our draft budget. So under legislation, we're required to adopt, council is required to adopt a budget between the 31st of May and the 1st of August each financial year. So this public consultation is part of the process that we're following. So for the FY23 financial year, we're looking at operating revenue of $69 million. The key parts of our revenue are the financial assistance grant, which makes up about $7.3 million. We also have the Mount Isa Water Board dividend of $3.6 million. Then at this point, our operational expenditure is around $70.5 million. This includes depreciation, and we're looking at an operational deficit of $1.5 million. Capital works will be funded by grants revenue of about $15 million, and the total capital works budget is $34.3 million. So Director Renee will go through the detail of what those projects are. So in order to deliver this budget, these are the key inputs. So utilities and charges and rates are proposed to increase by 6%, water at 3%, sewer at 6%, and waste at 6%. Then looking at the inputs, why have we arrived at those percentage rises for our rates and utilities? We've looked at the economy at the moment, and you look at the fiscal outlook, there is a supply-demand imbalance happening at the moment because of COVID, because of several inputs on the market. So what's driving the strong demand is there's a shift to goods consumption. Just a reminder, everybody, please, could you put your phones on silent or flight mode? Because we're live streaming, thank you. And also, the other thing that we're looking at with supply is that there's been a lot of pressure on the market because of COVID. The supply of workers or employees to deliver works has reduced because of the health impacts of COVID-19. That has also impacted supply of actual goods and materials and the prices at which we get them. So generally, there is a lot of pressure on the supply chain, and it has been adversely impacted by COVID. That's what's driving some of these costs up. So going into detail here, we've got some actual, the major impacts, and this has come from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and this is March 2022 data. The biggest bar in that graph there, you can see at the end, that's your fuel costs and your energy. So even for us as council, we're feeling the impact of the increase in the fuel prices. The second one is just the cost of materials and services. It has gone up, mainly because of that demand-supply imbalance. Then other overheads, much higher. Staff wages is a key component. We're a service industry as local government, so we rely on employees to deliver the majority of our services. We're feeling the pressures of attracting employees, having enough staff on board to deliver the works, as well as the rising cost of employment, so to say. Then customer demand, that's another variable. As local government, we provide a whole range of services. Community expects us to deliver those services, and every year expectations rise and rise because people do need us to deliver those services. Then there is other factors there, but the key one, the key input for us is the local government cost index. So there's some historical data, but at the moment we're sitting on approximately 4%. Local government cost index. So what that says is that in the local government sector generally, we're looking at potentially an increase of about 4% in costs, or in the average costs, just by the end of this financial year. If you've been listening to the news or watching the news, inflation is around 5%. However, wages growth are only about 2.4%, and we have to react as a local government because of all those market variables. Ooh. Did I lose my presentation? There we go, that's better. All right, so going into our detailed revenue, our revenue is made up of our rates, fees and charges, our sales revenue, our grants income, some interest that we receive and just other general income. So in total, that's the $69 million. The bulk of our revenue comes from our rates, which is 69%, or $47 million. That's our rates, levies, and charges combined. That's the bulk of our income. Then we have other fees, $2.9 million. We also have some sales revenue from some of the services we deliver, $2 million. We get operating grants, including our financial assistance grant of $11 million. Interest on our bank accounts, $900. And then other income, $4.4 million. And the majority of this is the water dividend from the Mount Isa Water Board. All right. Then, giving you a breakdown of rates, our rates are generally divided into commercial, industrial, industry, intensive industry, residential, and rural. And the bar chart on the left just shows how that trend of revenue has been over the last 10 years with our residential revenue, which is around the $17 million mark. So in terms of household medians, for commercial at 6% increase, we're looking at a median of $1,600 as an increase. Then for industry, we're looking at $527 in your rates bill. For intensive industry, that equates to $18,000, $18,500, which is approximately 9%, so at 6% it's much lower. Then for the residential, who are the bulk of our community members, we're looking at an $84 for the rates bill increase at 6%, and rural is $149. That's at 7%, but it's lower at 6%. So that's what makes up our rates revenue of $17 million. So I've also got a chart here that shows the residential rates rise, historical, over the last 10 years. And you can see a trend from 2014. We started about 6%, then it drops to about 4%, then drops down to 0 in 2016, then back up to 9% in 2017, then down to 3% in 2018. It stabilizes at around 3% up to 2020, and then there is a drop to 0 in 2021 in line with COVID and the environment. Then it does go up to about 3.75% in 2022, and at this point we're looking at about 6%. But what that shows you is that even with all these dips and troughs, our revenue is fairly consistent. So this is what it takes for us to be able to generate that revenue required to deliver the level of service for the community. Then going into the utility charges, which are your garbage, your sewerage, your water access, and excess charges. So at 6% for garbage, you're looking at an increase of $21. Then for sewer, at 6%, that's $40. Water access at 3%, so we've kept it at 3% in line with the local government cost index. So that 3% just allows us to be able to cope with the increase in that cost index. So we're looking at $36, and for excess charges, that's $11. So in total, for our utilities, we're looking at $108 in increase. So I've also got a breakdown of how that compares to last financial year, and you can see the purple there at the top is your water excess. The green, which is the bulk of it, is your water access. Then the red is your sewerage charges, and then the blue at the bottom is your garbage. All right. Then in terms of expenditure, so our total expenditure, including depreciation, is around 70 million, 70.5. And like I said, the bulk of what the services we deliver were its employee costs. So we're looking at $20.5 million. Now that also includes the councillor's remuneration in there. It's included in that number. Then the other big cost is our materials and services, so just the cost of just providing everything that we do provide. Then we've got finance costs, which is our bank charges, interests on outstanding loans. Then finally, that is the depreciation or amortization, which is spreading the cost of our non-current assets, our fixed assets, over their life. So it's reflecting how much consumption we have over our non-current assets. So represented in bar graphs, materials and services is the biggest one at $33 million. Then employee costs, which are around 29%, and depreciation 22%, and the other is just around 2%. That's our finance costs. Then, as a local government, we have a responsibility to be financially sustainable. It is something that the Department of Local Government actually monitors, and we have to report on it. So there's a number of measures that have been put in front of us and a number of targets that we have to operate within to be seen as being financially sustainable. So the first one is our operating surplus ratio. It's basically the difference between your operating revenue and your expenditure, and you must be positive. So that's the upper limit there, that's 10%, and the lower limit is 0. So at all times, our operational surplus ratio should be between 0 and 10%. So there's also the blue line represents the historical and the future trend based on the budget. And as you can see, for the 2020 actuals and 21, we are below that 0, so we did not meet the target. So even with our draft budget at a deficit of $1.5 million, we don't meet the target. But we have to make steps to increase that operating surplus so that we are within those two lines. So basically, the decisions that we make today that are made by Council in June will determine how quickly we end up meeting those targets there. The other ratio that is reportable is the asset sustainability ratio. So this ratio just measures how we are renewing our assets as we use them up. So it's all the assets we have, it's not anything new. Are we replacing them when we should? And again, there is targets there. Normally you should be around the 90% mark, meaning that as your assets are wearing down, you should be replacing them at least 90%. On a local level, like if you look at the community, what that means is that if your garbage truck hasn't been replaced, it has an impact on service delivery. So that's why this is very important. It also has an impact as well on compliance, safety. So if a road is not maintained to a standard or renewed as it should be, it has an impact on safety, possibly insurance claims. So that's why this ratio is very important. So looking at the history as well, this is a ratio that we have historically struggled to meet. So the orange line, that's the target, and the blue represents the history as well as the future projections. So according to the data, the 22 budget, the prior year one, that's the only budget that actually aimed to accomplish that, to meet the target or exceed the target. And if you can see, based on what we've put forward as our capital works, the amount of renewals is still below target, but we want to work steadily and make sure that it goes above that 90%. So this is something that the infrastructure services and corporate and community will be working together on. Another ratio is just our net financial liability. So this measures our liquidity, and basically you should have enough assets to pay your liabilities or your current liabilities. And because of the way the ratio is set up, you should be below that green line there. You always need to be below. So this one, we have met as a target. As you can see, we're below the green line. So that shows that cash flow wise, we are in a healthy position. So, and you can see that in our monthly reports. The other one, this is not reportable, but it gives you a snapshot of how we deliver the services that we do. We have, the orange line is the QTC, so Queensland Treasury Corporation also looks at this data, and they set some standards on how much on-source revenue, how much revenue we should be able to generate from our own sources rather than relying on grants, government grants. So they've set the standard at 60%. And at the moment, we're exceeding that target. We're around the 75% mark. So that shows because the bulk of our revenue is from rates, levies, and charges. The other one that is an important and a statutory one is that we have some debt that has been used to finance some of our critical infrastructure our water and sewer. So I've got a graph here. At the moment, we're looking at existing debt, which is around $19-20 million, and you see that debt amortized over the life, and around 2031, we should have finished paying off the existing debt. That is if we don't go ahead and get more borrowings at this point. And there is an average amount, there is a standard as to how much debt we should have per capita. The blue line there for our population size, this is where we should be. We should always be above that number. We should always be above that line. So the orange there, the total debt per rateable property, we're way above that line, showing that we do have that ability to pay debts when they fall due. We're in a strong position financially. Then that's it for the operational budget. I'll just hand over to Renee to go through the capital works budget.
Thank you, Chalea. So my name is Renee Willis. I'm the Director of Infrastructure Services, and I'll just present today as our proposal as the draft budget for the capital works. So the proposal for next year as a draft is a summary here of in separate areas. We've got community facilities of approximately 6.3 million, total environment and regulatory services area 8.8 million, total mobile plant of 3.5 million, total parks and reserves of 3.2, total roads and drainage of 6.5, and total water and sewerage of 6.8, totaling approximately 34.3 million. Now, just to note too, at the beginning of the budget pack, it does indicate 40.1 million. That was a typo. If you turn to page 10, it did indicate a breakdown of projects that totaled 31.8 million. The difference that you're seeing here is that Council's currently undertaken a third quarter budget review. From that third quarter budget review, we'd highlighted a project for the materials recovery facility, which you may have been aware of. Due to the delay in the delivery of that equipment, we have had to roll over, or carry over, I should say, costs into next year. So this is why the total has gone up. The other reason the total has gone up is Council's recently received funding for Preparing Australia Community Program, which is very exciting for Council. So that money has been added in there too. So I just wanted to give you an update of where we are. However, obviously this does go back to Council to approve. Just to give some historical information as to how we have been going with capital budget. Previous completed capital budget for 2020 to 21 is 13.4. 2019-20 is 13.2. 2018 to 19 is 16.9, and 2017 to 18 is 13.8. The current capital expenditure, from an extract of the 30th of April, our actual spend is 17.4 with a committed of 12.2. This is a total of $39.6 million. The current capital budget is $34 million. So we have a number of projects that are coming to fruition at the moment. Some of the delays, again, has been the delivery of equipment. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but when you purchase a vehicle, purchase plant, you can come up to about 6 months delay, and in some cases 8 months. So that's been some of our delays in those projects. So these are particular projects that have come up. So we've got a bit of a summary for major projects where there's been a combined funding from external state or federal government. We've got Centennial Place, Materials Recovery Facility, Family Fun Park, Flood Warning Signage, City and Rural Road Rehabilitation, Riversley Road Rehabilitation, Western Alma Street Upgrade, Smart Meters, Regional Road Resilience Drainage, and Pontoon at Lake Mandara. That totals approximately 21 million. So for the Renewal project summary, we've got water and sewer of 4.5 million, community facilities of 1.35, roads and drainage of 2.76, and mobile plant replacement of 3.5 million. That totals at $12 million. And we've got new projects proposed projects of Miners Memorial, so 300,000, Car Park and Road Telstra Hill of 550,000, Transport Logistics Centre, so this is a design for that particular project, of 200,000, and a statue for 100 years that was proposed for 100,000. So that totals a 1.15. This is to, just to go back to the Director of Corporate and Community Services, Chalea, has indicated too that something that we need to work towards is a sustainability ratio. And from that, we have to look at the particular projects we're looking at. So we need to ensure that we're renewing our infrastructure and to meet the demand, or to meet the ratio that is projected, and to improve. So these are the particular projects we are putting there. We wanted to highlight too that for Camberwell, that we've got road and drainage parks projects of 200,000, water and sewer projects of 200,000, and additional renovation to the hall internally of 250,000. There are projects that we've applied for, so we're waiting for the notification as to whether or not we've been successful for that, is an upgrade to the aerodrome of 1.9 million, and we've applied for an aqua park at the main park there of 898,000. In addition to this, Council has been working very hard, and officers have been working hard of putting applications forward for, to apply for funding for projects. These are the particular projects we've applied for: is library refurbishment and extension, Outback at Isa design, installation of solar panels at the Council office building and civic centre, Camel aerodrome design, which I mentioned before, the priority cycle network program, always forget that one, shared pathways, design and construction of Rodeo Drive and Miles Street in CBD, Median East and Miles Street streetscape, Mount Isa City Lookout construction, mini water parks, Mount Isa and Camberwell, again I mentioned previously, network reconfiguration to remove direct pumping into the network, Mount Isa Sporting Facilities upgrade project, and Splashes water play. So depending on the funding, we will find out throughout the year how Council has, whether or not we've been successful in these particular projects. That was my presentation today. Thank you for listening. What we're hoping to have from the community is some feedback on the draft budget that has gone out and any proposals you have. There are forms here to fill out. And then can be provided back to Council, so we can take that into consideration as we go through the final stages of the draft budget. Is there any questions? Submissions close on the 31st of May.
Before we start, before we start, if people do submit a submission, are we going to answer them in writing? Is that the plan, David?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we would respond in writing, but also invite those parties that wish to present to Council as they did last year. So that's the same offer.
Okay, so if you do put a submission in, or if you do fill out the form that we've provided today, Council will reply in writing and let you know if you were successful in actually putting something or taking something out of the budget. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, terrific. All right, so if you can ask a question, if you can just stand up and say your name, and then that'd be great.
Good evening, Chalea. I'm just wondering, what's the council policy on retiring of aged equipment, and where do you demonstrate that salvage value recovery? Didn't see it in any of the documentation here. Perhaps you could guide my eyes to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've been working on over the last couple of months is developing our asset management plans. So simply put, your asset management plans will define, first of all, the levels of service to the community. It will also define our renewal policy around how often, at what point do we intervene and renew assets. It will also define the standards at which we intervene. So for example, this building, when do we come in and actually paint it? That gets defined, and that's the piece that's been missing. So for you to achieve success or to meet those targets, you actually must plan to meet the targets, and that's what those asset management plans are. So we're putting in place there some plans as to how we can be strategic, ensuring that we can deliver the service levels expected, and we intervene when we need to and not when services fail. So that's across the entire range of our assets. So we have adopted the roads, stormwater drains, asset management plan, so that was adopted by council. The one that's coming to council is buildings, land and other structures. That's coming to council in June, as well as the water and sewer asset management plan. So the other one that we've been working on, and at the moment it's just an administrative policy, is our plant replacement policy. We did an internal audit, and some of our plant management practices were brought into question. There were some areas identified for improvements. So those are the improvements that we're working towards, or strategizing how we're going to implement those improvements. And again, with all of that activity, it comes at a cost. So one of the challenges that we have is government usually does not fund asset renewals. It's entirely the work of local government. There has been a bit of a shift. There's a few more grants that are allowing you to use government money to renew assets. However, most of the funding that we do get that's available with regards to assets is brand new assets. So it's a tricky balance. When you have your forward projections, it makes you strategic as well as to what projects you actually aim for, what you apply for grant funding, because guess what? Once you build that asset, you have to maintain it, you have to run it, you have to replace it, you have to renew it. So there's all that whole of life cost that we've taken into account. Yeah.
Thanks, Shalaya.
Any other questions?
I just before we go to the next one, I just wanted to ask on Reservoir 4, we've got a quote for the new lid for that for 1.8. Did we end up getting the quote for a whole new reservoir? Because you were going to, David, look into what a whole new reservoir was going to cost?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The manager of Water and Sewer has been away at the moment, so I haven't been able to get that information back from him. He has returned, so I'm just waiting for that information so that I can share that with council. So that was raised at a briefing session, I believe, and I will be providing that information to council. So we take that into a consideration as part of the whole of life cost of the project. So when we do look at whether or not we construct a roof on the tank itself, or whether or not we decommission the tank and put a new tank in, is there a purpose of having that tank to begin with? So do we look at the requirements for business sustainable or business continuity or delivery of water, ensuring that we have water at all times in any emergency situation? So that's something we look into under disaster management as well, and we consider.
Thank you. And I went back and had a look through a few things, and I could see that a new reservoir costs 1.7 in 2017. So it'd be just interesting to see if we're going to pay 1.8 for a lid, and it's only 2.2 for a new one. That's probably something we need to look into as quickly as we can. But
thank you,
let's
Madam
go
Mayor.
to the public.
Sorry, can I just answer that too? I believe Chile has also mentioned too that with the increase of service costs and obviously material costs, the cost that you've mentioned there would be significantly increased, and obviously we'll take that into account.
Yeah, and look, I believe I chatted to someone and they said back in 2017 they almost bought a lid, and then they realised that they could get the whole reservoir for almost cheaper than just buying the lid. So that's why I remembered that conversation and brought it up. But let's go to the community.
Hi, my name is John Rhodes. In regards to the question was asked before in terms of salvage of the old rubbish truck, so to speak. I just wondered why these 2 new rubbish trucks were bought into this budget when it should have been bought in before the last election. And also, the road around the stadium there, you know, you talk about road infrastructure and so forth, and you go around and you reseal other roads that don't need sealing, yet that road around George Street and so forth, just not George Street itself, but further around the other side, it's got potholes that's been there for a long time. So
Is that Sutton Street?
is it Sutton Street? It must be Sutton Street.
Is that
yeah.
the one with the Buchanan Park? Or,
Yeah, the Buchanan Park one. What I'm asking is, you know, you seal the other roads that, say, Enid Street for one, that didn't need sealing. You know, you spent money there, which should have gone down other roads. So, yeah, that's my question. So, my question about the rubbish truck is, the budget should have been before the last election, and not this one?
Thank you for your question. I can't actually speak to what happened in the previous election and why the garbage truck wasn't purchased at that point, but the Chalea has mentioned that due to insufficient asset management plans, the practices haven't been put in place. So we are looking at the roads which have been accepted at the moment and that programming as well. So it is an improvement process. Absolutely take on board any comments you have, and I'm happy to take on notice that particular road so I can come back to you and give you an update on that road. But to improve our assets, we need a plan as we go through, and part of that plan is those inspections and having adequate inspections of those roads and having those plans put in place, having a system to capture that information without losing it as well, which is something that Chalea and her team are working diligently at the moment as well. Everyone loves Excel spreadsheets. I do, but it's not everyone's cup of tea, but a lot of the information has been kept in that format, and because of that, information and knowledge as people leave the business has gone. So we're putting in place a system that ensures that if I'm not here, the decisions that have been made or the reasoning is actually captured. Those asset management plans, those plans are captured in that system as well. But happy to take on notice the George Street item. Thank you.
Can I just say through the chair too, just John, to answer your question, and excuse my back please, but I have mentioned in quite a few council meetings that the process of if people out there have got problems with their roads, that they need to report the problem so that, as we said, council can capture that data and know what's going on. If we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. So again, I would like to encourage all members of the public, if you have got a problem with roads, whatever, not being safe or something wrong with them, that there is a process. You just ring and you put in the complaint through the, I think we call it the help desk. Yeah. So.
And we've got a plan going out, haven't we?
You're spending money on like Enid Street for one, you know, resealing it. That you didn't need to spend money there at all. Enid, up near Taranga's shopping centre there, that was resealed. You know, just no.
The street got resealed and it didn't need resealing.
And really, it's not a reseal. It's just a cover. It's just a band-aid over the top, pretty much. The other thing that I want to bring up is, you know, you're increasing the rates here. I own a business myself, and you know, it's a costly exercise, and for you to just to put the rates up for businesses, you know, you may say it's only $1,000, but Jesus, you know, you times that twice in 1 year, and you look at how many shops are closed, well, empty shops. You know, because the rent is high, and then you've got outgoings, which is the council rates. And for a small business, you know, let's say you start up a clothing shop. can they afford $14,000 a year on top of the rent? You know, this is what, I don't know if you take it into consideration on how many shops down East Street, not Mile Street, is closed.
Thank you.
Just want to bring that forward.
No,
Thank
and
you.
I think that's one for the councillors, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
You know,
right way. I think
Yes.
it's one for us, it's for our ears, yeah.
I was actually going to encourage you to put in a submission because that's the feedback that we require from a consultation meeting like this.
Yeah.
But let me just assure you that we do understand the cost of living pressure, just even for the average household, for businesses as well. We know that businesses are just coming out of COVID and they've been hit really hard. So we're not just sitting there passing on the costs. I'll share with you some of the measures that we've taken even to get to that 6%. The first one is we've talked about our asset management plans and making sure that when we do have some money available to invest in renewing our assets, first of all, it's the right assets and it's not reactive because reactive usually is expensive. We want to be proactive. So just by sitting down and mapping out what do we have and what do we need to do to look after what we have, that's the first step. Some of the results will not be realized immediately, but we've got some foundation there. The other big one that we're looking at, and Director Renee has talked about it, is around our project management and scheduling. The reality is that getting trades to Mount Isa is very hard. There's a general skills shortage within Queensland, within Australia. So even just to bring tradespeople over here, one, it's very expensive, it's a premium. That's if you can even get them. We've had experiences when we've gone out to the market and nobody has responded. So there's a number of measures that we're putting in place to ensure that we're still competitive. Some of it is around bundling our packages so that we can get some economies of scale and attract the suppliers to come to Mount Isa. Another one is that where possible, we'll go for grant funding. We're very aggressive with grants. So we're making every effort to see what's out there and applying for those grants. Then a big one you've seen us talk about, or you've heard us talk about the MRF, the Materials Recovery Facility that's being built. That's a big investment for us, and one of the reasons is that our waste levy payments are quite high. We spend about $2 million every year because we're taking everything to landfill. So once we have a MRF, that bill reduces because we're diverting materials out of the landfill and we're reusing them. So those are some of the reasons that you're looking at. The other one that I will touch on is just our operating systems. The reality is that we'll never be able to have the number of resources we need or the number of bodies to do the work. So we have to work smarter, more efficiently, embrace technology, and allow us to engage with community and deliver services in a better and more efficient and modern way. So we are investing in our ERP. So again, I do encourage you, put in your submissions. Councillors will have to hear your feedback, how you will be impacted by this draft budget. And whatever ideas you put forward, I encourage you, please bring them in. It will all be presented to the councillors for that decision.
And I think it's important you have your say today as well, because I've been very transparent that I don't believe that a 6% rate rise is something that our community can deal with at the moment. And I think it's important that the community speak to the councillors, because maybe I am on my own with this, but I do believe that we should be making some more hard calls. And some of those items, I do believe we could be going for funding, and if we can't get the funding, then they just get postponed until we do get the funding. But again, want to hear from you guys.
Just to add to that, what Chalea has mentioned too, so we do have a number of projects that are on the capital works list, and throughout the year funding does become available. So those projects, what we're hoping to do is have them at a point where we can actually apply for funding. I'm not sure if everyone's heard of the shovel ready funding projects. What that means is you need to ensure that you have detailed design so that you can go straight out and actually apply for that funding. So a lot of the work that we are doing is ensuring that we have projects ready to do that. So as we go through, there's a couple of projects that are on that capital works list that is actually is taking that into account. So you've got to look at the life cycle of the project as you go through. So it doesn't mean that we have the design this year that we're going to build it the next year. We have the design because then we have it ready to look at whether or not we're going to be applying for funding in future. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor and councillors. Your second biggest cost line in operational expenses is wages, or listed here as employee benefits. How does that stack up, or historically, for council for, say, the last 5 years? And how does it stack up against other councils with similar budget sizes in revenue?
Thank you for that. So the business of local government, the good thing is that most of us, our services that we deliver are pretty comparable. So we have done some benchmarking with other local governments or resource local governments as well. And we're pretty much on par in terms of percentages. One of the things that we need to be careful with as well when it comes to benchmarking is that you have to look at the entire range of the services that you deliver with the resources that you have. There is some local governments that are involved in healthcare because they just don't have that service provider available. So one of the discussions we should potentially be having, or some of the submissions, is what is the community willing to let go of in service delivery in order for us to be sustainable? We have tried very hard to ensure that we maintain that level of service within this budget because we know every service we deliver is important. And there is a real gap. There is nobody available to just pick it up from us. So perhaps as we...
Is that the battery? Yeah. We have a budget crisis with batteries.
Thank you, Edie.
Can I just
Yes, please,
maybe
go
just
ahead.
try and guide you into answering the question, if that's all right? So how does 30 points stack up against the last 5 years' worth of council's budgets?
It's pretty much on par. So we've averaged the similar amounts in terms of our percentages of expenditure. It's been sitting around that percentage throughout.
So if council's expectations are to raise rates by 6 points, is there any plan to make a reduction in the wage line?
So some of the strategies that we've implemented with the quarter budget review, because we have to review the budget every quarter, is that we've actually frozen employment. So you will see in your budget pack that the number of employees is actually the same, is exactly what we have. So we're not planning to grow the numbers. However, we're in the process of a certified agreement negotiation, and cost of living is a pressure even for our employees, so we can't expect a 0% rise. What that final figure will be in terms of the wage rise will come out of that certified agreement negotiations. David, did you want to add more to that?
Thank you, Edie. I estimate we're somewhere between 30 and 40 staff short at this period. Going back, there was original work done 2 years ago that said we should have had a workforce of around about 280. Our EFTs are nowhere near that. We're doing we're doing more with less. We currently have 8 trainees. We'd probably have how many apprentices? 4 apprentices. So they go up through the increments. So the person stays there, reaches their full increments going through. We've had to employ casual staff to come in because we don't have those expertise here. That's been expensive. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And I 2014 we had a workforce of less than 200 though, so it would be good to see the figures if we're going to talk figures, because I know it was less than 200, and I know that when I got in, we were told we had 280 and we didn't have that, so there was some mistakes made for sure.
So if I may, at the moment, last year we had a turnover of staff of 52%. There are very few organisations that have that level of turnover. We've clawed that all the way back. As mentioned by Chalea, we've had a staff freeze in place. So when staff have come up and said, I just want this replaced, the answer has been no. So we've clawed that back. It'd be great to have some more staff. I know Councillor Coghlan reminds me consistently that she would like more parks and gardens staff. But at the moment, the budget in its draft format does not present any new positions, full stop.
And just
So the attrition rate of 51 points.
52.
52. How does that stack up against other regional councils?
Diamantina's not far behind it. It's in front of it, actually. Your average local government authority nowadays would sit somewhere between 10, 15%. Again, remember, local government is an ageing workforce, so you've got a lot of people that are going out. They will take long service leave and take a long time to depart. What we're happy about is that 50% that we witnessed is now come way back. And again, investing in trainees and apprenticeships means you might get longer term productivity and commitment out of them. So all of those things coming through, I've had to have temporary HR managers, we've had temporary engineers, we've had temporary project managers. We don't have a building certifier. That person is brought in from outside the region. So again, all of those positions are challenging. Cloncurry is advertising consistently for a few people as well. So, yeah.
Try it again, see if it works.
back on. Thank you, Edie. If I can add to that, the employee cost in the draft budget is all the positions, it's the cost of all the services that we need to deliver. And the CEO has rightly said there's some positions that are vacant. What we're experiencing with the skills shortage is that when we put a job out for recruitment, first of all, the number of applications that we get has dwindled. And when we do get candidates apply, they interview us and not the other way around. So employers are competing for employees. We have to be smart about our value proposition so that we can attract skilled employees. The other thing that you have to look at is right next door, just outside of this, is the mine. And employee-wise or benefit-wise, we cannot compete with the private sector. We just can't at that level. So we try to do the best, offer as much as we can to our staff, or the best value proposition that we can, and hopefully attract some staff. But there is generally a skills shortage, and we're feeling it. Yeah. Was there any other questions or any clarifications?
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't mention my name before, for those that don't know me. My name's Luke, and I feel for you with the pressure of supply of equipment, pressure of attracting tradespeople in future. Good luck with that one, with all the reconstruction of businesses and homes along the flooded areas in Queensland. I think attracting tradespeople will be such a monumental issue. Unfortunately, from a community perspective, our corporate entities that we rely upon generally are not the best of community citizens, and I'll just leave it at that. My focus is on how you can save money, and one of the things that was sort of glaring, Chalea, when you made your presentation, was the significant amount of money that was borrowed. And I'm wondering, just to understand if there are some savings that could be garnered there, whether the funding was secured on high fixed rates, whether it's an amortisation program, whether it's a fully funded debt loan, or whether it's pegged against bank bill instruments. Now, the feeding frenzy by our financial institutions, not just locally but globally, has already commenced. So hard times ahead to predict what the interest rates will be and what the outgoings will be by council. and perhaps a very small deficit that's reported might be significantly higher in the next report that comes about. So if you would be kind enough to just highlight those issues around the debt funding, and perhaps keep knocking on your bank manager's door, play him against the others, just like Glencore and the council.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. I'll just explain a little bit about how debt occurs within the local government sector. So we only have one bank when it comes to debt, that's the Queensland Treasury Corporation, and there's an approval process with the Department of Local Government before you can borrow. So it's not every single shiny thing that you can borrow for, there is a strict criteria. So our existing borrowings are for water and sewer infrastructure, which is critical infrastructure. And the reason why water and sewer, usually you'd go towards a model of debt, is that you're spreading the cost of funding that infrastructure across multiple generations. So it's an equitable distribution across generations. Otherwise, if you pay for it out of your rates bill, you're charging just one generation in one hit for benefits that will be realized over a longer term. I guess the other advantage of debt is that in terms of liquidity, you don't have to tap into your reserves. There is a borrowing, but there is an obligation for you. You have a financial liability there. One of the things that we looked at with our budget process is some of the works around the water and sewer. Should we be going to borrow to finance that? And we went through, we had those discussions, conversations with QTC, and at that point, based on our debt policy, a decision was made that, look, we do have some healthy cash reserves. We're sitting on about $65 million at the moment, and we can finance the asset renewals that we currently have unless something major. And debt is something that I think you need to have it for a rainy day. So it's not something that we take lightly. It's not for every asset investment. So we have to be smart about what we go and borrow for. So absolutely, I'll take your feedback on board. It is one of the key considerations. Should we be funding some of these assets through borrowings? And at that point, a decision was made, we should just use our own resources.
And I think I just want to point out, I just want to point out, like, for every $400,000, that's a 1% raise in your rates. So if you want to bring it down by 1%, we need to look for a $400,000 saving. And I guess that's one of the things that I would like to see us in some of the projects we're putting forward, that perhaps we go for funding. And if it delays that project, then so be it. But I think it's extremely important that we don't burden ratepayers with some of these projects that especially could be delayed by a year or so. And we are just coming out of COVID. It's not as if we've just had a world pandemic, you know, and for us to get as far as we have as a city is absolutely fantastic. But I know there's businesses out there that didn't fare as well as others. So to me, I think we need to look at funding as being paramount going forward for some of our projects, because spending, and I've said this today in the meeting, spending $550,000 on Telstra Hill is something that should be funded by the state or federal government, you know, not by ratepayers. And the $200,000 for the transport hub, that's a 10 or 15 year plan. Does it have to be this year, and can we not fund it and have a look at different opportunities? So there's things like that I'd love to see funded. And you know, I think I've said we've got land acquisitions that, you know, got a 1.2 on that. Does it have to be 1.2? Could we not halve that, you know? And these are things we just have to make some hard decisions. And that's why it's important to hear from the ratepayers in Mount Isa, because for me, I don't know how a pensioner finds $84. Because when you get your $900 a fortnight, that's slim pickings for some people when they've got to pay insurance, pay for food, electricity. There's so many impacts living here. So it's to me, I think it's on us to look at that budget. But I really would love to hear from people at home. If you are watching this and you have got our budget, you can download it from our Facebook page or our website and have a look at it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to speak to a couple of the projects that you've highlighted then. In relation to the Telstra Hill project, Council has an obligation under the agreement we have with the easement that we've entered into with Telstra that we are required to seal that road, so that is why that project has been highlighted.
But it doesn't have to be done this year. It doesn't. I'm just saying, it doesn't. We could begin funding for it.
In relation to, that has been identified also as a risk area for falls and trips in that road. There have been many concerns from the community. It is a very heavily used area, so that has come back to Council, and that's why Council put that on the list there. The other item there was the transport or transit hub, the logistics centre, sorry. Council's in the position, I actually mentioned that before too, is the only way we can apply for certain funded projects is that we actually have detailed design. So this particular project is that we are required to have, for this particular project is the design for that particular project. It is not the construction of that works. So for us to have shovel-ready projects, we actually have to have design to move forward. So just so I can clarify for those particular projects.
But we can get funding for designs as well. So we can, and I'm part of the MITES board, and they look at projects just like this one, which could be actually run through the MITES to see if we could get funding for it. So, look, there's definitely other ways to do some of these things.
Deputy Mayor, you had...
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to respond back to Luke's, I'd just like to add a couple of things about the debt. The debt is a long-term debt, so I think it's over 10 years or more since we've borrowed money. In the terms that I've been involved, and I think even the other councillors, if I'm correct, Councillor Coughlin, there's been no borrowings by council. We've just continued to pay down that debt each term. We have looked at borrowing, you know, as Shalaya explained about trying to spread the load, but it just doesn't work for us at this present time. We've also looked at trying to refinance the debt, which I think was part of your question, and the costs of us changing the loan from the existing sort of contracts that we have about the loans is significant, and it's millions actually. So that turned out to be a bit of a flop too. We couldn't go down that road in terms of being able to exit one loan and then take up another one, and that was with, as Shalaya has explained, with the Queensland Treasury Corporation. It's just not doable and not reasonable for us to go down that road. Yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions? Yes. Another swap? Let's try another swap.
My name's Glenn. Going back to the slide where the percentages of rate increase was. So in the percentages of rate increase, you have, what's that, intensive industry at 9%? So you're going to run it at 6%. So intensive industry, is that the mine? Right. So why not charge the mine that earns billions of dollars a year more interest rate than charging the average person who earns $900 a week instead?
And I'll answer that question. It is a point of my own. Mount Isa charges the cheapest rates in Queensland for mines. And if we model on our neighbour, which is Cloncurry, they charge a hell of a lot more in rates. And we've got a mine about to close down now, Lady Loretta, and their rates are extremely reasonable again, this is something I've asked for it to be reviewed and it wasn't reviewed, but it's something that really bothers me. Lady Loretto is like an ATM for Glencore, and yet their rates is very similar to one of our clubs in town who donates all their profits to charity. So we aren't doing ourselves some favours with these mines, and it is something I raised during the budget process that we should be reviewing the rates we charge for mines.
So if I could add, Madam Mayor, we did do some rates modelling just to see what the impact is if we could increase the rates in the different categories. So again, I encourage you to provide a submission along the lines of what you've just presented, and council can look at it. Because this is a draft budget, it's not the final budget, but whatever comes out of the public will inform some of the decisions that councillors make. So absolutely, this is something that you can put in a submission for.
Can we just get your microphone, because in case someone's trying to listen at home?
Just going back on the point of Telstra Hill, I know the road is pretty rough up there and it's used by a lot of people for training, so to speak. And you're saying there's a liability if someone falls over and trips and hurts themselves. Can we not just put a sign up there temporarily until we get funding to get it fixed?
Thank you. Signs don't always cover it, no matter what. Even if you put a sign up, you're still liable. When we have had that easement agreement with Telstra, the understanding is that we would be doing it straight away. It has been a long time in that negotiation period to actually get the easement. Correct me if I'm wrong, 2 years, possibly higher. 3 or 4 years to get that easement agreement from Telstra, as it has been a very heavily used area of council. Similar to when you think about parks and things like that, we have to put the investment in to ensure that the community, that those that use that, that asset feel safe and secure when they're utilising it. To your point with seeking funding, as I said before, as funding becomes available, the projects that we actually have on the list can be carried forward as well. So we can apply for funding that we have on the list. Where we are with at the moment with this particular particular project is we're in the detailed design phase for the project. So we will have those documents to apply for funding for those works. We are in regular contact with the state and federal government to see when funding's coming out. A lot of the funding is similar each time. However, the guidelines change. So they could be for design, but most of the time it is for construction. We find that a lot of the time it is for construction because they want to go up and cut a ribbon to say something is delivered. Design actually doesn't deliver anything. So what's really positive, and we've seen some progress in from funding bodies, is that they are starting to put design in funding options. It's only just come out in the last year or so. So we are preparing so that we have projects that we can put up to say we would like these designs. So we either have strategies or strategic investigations or things like that we can put forward. We've put that forward recently for building our regions round 6. We went through the expression of interest phase. We were successful in that phase too, so we're putting through and requesting for design of that and construction. So there are opportunities to do that, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but we have to ensure that we can put that forward. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Just an addition.
I don't think we answered, though, with the easement. Why didn't we put in for funding? If we knew 2 years ago that's what we were getting with Telstra Hill, why didn't we put in for funding? And it wasn't the resource funding a fantastic opportunity to put in for exactly that that hill, which would have benefited the community.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Because we only recently had the easement documents, you cannot apply for funding unless you have ownership or easement. So we didn't have it at that stage.
So I guess what we're saying is we've got time to do Telstra Hill because it's been thrown upon us, so no one can expect us to put 550,000 of ratepayers' money into this at this moment. It's a big ask for a community.
Can I just add something, Madam Mayor, through you, thanks?
Yep, sure.
Look, the budget consultation tonight is one community consultation we have, but we do have a range of other ones over a period of time. And overwhelmingly, in consultations with community about what the things they want to see here, the Telstra Hill thing kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And that's why councillors have heard that from the community and have decided to do something about it. And as Renee's indicated, this has been going on for 3 or 4 years now. We haven't been able to rush out and get that land because there was 3 lots of leases across that land, you know, including Telstra, the Bureau of Meteorology, and also a private grazing lease. So they all took a lot of time to get these underway and to convert the land to council ownership so that we could go in and do this stuff. But we take your point, and we understand that there's a cost there, but the attraction by the community to Telstra Hill is enormous, I can tell you. And if we get asked, and I'll ask Councillor Coghlan to comment here, but I get asked, you know, almost weekly about when are we going to do Telstra Hill up because of all the people that do go up there, you know. So anyway, I'll just add that to the conversation. Thanks.
Councillor Coghlan, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, look, I will just say it is one of trying to make Mount Isa more livable. Fitness, health is one of the things that draws people here. And I do know people love being able to run up hills and do exercise in that. It leads to fitness, mental health. You know, they're a lot clearer. But I did have 3 years in the state member's office as well. And I can attest that at least monthly there would be a couple of people in every month complaining about it and why weren't council doing anything about it. But it was hard, exactly what you said. It was a very hard process to do because you had the 3 separate leases and that, and then a lot of that paperwork had to go down to sections of the government that weren't even basically like the BOM. The paperwork for that had to go down to someone in Melbourne, I think it was. So that it did take time, but it is one thing. I get asked all the time in the public about Telstra Hill as well.
But imagine if we actually went for funding for Telstra Hill and for the transport hub and also took $400,000 off the land or property acquisitions. That's 3% we could save ratepayers. And you tell my mother who's 78 that she's got to pay $84 more for her home because people want to walk up Telstra Hill, or we have to prop up the tourist industry. It's a big ask, and especially for a 92-year-old Nan who lives in her own home and pays rates. Where's she finding that $84 from? And people who are selling dresses, how many, you know, those sort of impacts. And I think we need to really think about, you know, delaying some projects to make sure that we don't impact our own community.
Well, hopefully after Saturday at the election that the pensioners will get more money because both parties have acknowledged that there is a problem with our aged care and that we're not looking after them enough. So
yeah, I agree with that.
Just through the chair, just a addition to what Renee was speaking about in terms of accessing funding and having those shovel-ready projects there. As a matter of advocacy, the Northwest ROC, the Regional Organisation of Councils, is putting together or taking that issue of shovel-ready to the governments and saying, how do we, as local government areas, have a shovel-ready project ready? Because there's a cost involved in that. And there's a cost in development, there's a cost in design, and hopefully through that advocacy, through our own advocacy as well, we'll get more funding for that type of stuff. That you know, the ratepayers not funding those pre-project type of things that need to be done. There is a cost to it, to have those projects ready.
But we do have a shovel-ready project. We've got master plans for the library. We've got master plan for Outback at Isa. We've got a master plan for the CBD. We've got a design for the lookout. You know, we have some shovel-ready plans ready to go.
We've agreed to master plans, but from the master plans, the process goes into a design.
But that's right, and we need to get
And
funding.
there's a cost for that. Yes.
That's right, and it needs to be funded not by ratepayers. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, Jason Rainey. I thought this was community engagement, not just have a chat. So I've got a few questions. I'll start up here. So you've got 96 projects this year alone. You've taken 3 off to roll over. That equals 47 for next year. You've just told us that you spent 17 million year to date. You've got 12 committed to make 29. How are those projects actually going? Are you going to finish those 96 projects? Or are we just going to spend the money on those projects?
Sorry, the mics are gone flat.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, the projects at the moment, we present monthly at council meetings as to the delivery requirements for those projects and where they're up to. The extract that you have there is from April. What we require is each time those purchase orders, etc., come through. So there is a bit of a delay with the figures that you actually have there. Where we're going with the projects, at the moment we've got Manager of Major Projects here at the moment. He'll probably be able to provide more detail. With the projects, and as I've indicated, Council won't be carrying over particular projects if they're already in next year's budget. So if, for example, we have water and sewer lining or water and sewer new pipes or whatnot.
Is that a flat? All right, you got that.
Just project your voice. Be a school teacher.
It won't be in.
Testing.
It just needs to be on a microphone so we live stream. Maybe that's what it is.
Okay, I just picked up our third quarter budget review projects as well, so I've actually got something in front of me to show you. So where we are at the moment with those particular projects, the projects that we have concern for carryover are projects that we have got contractors saying we're going to start. We're going to start, we're going to start, we're going to start. Where the delay has been with them receiving materials. So they've ordered those materials and it hasn't been received. For particular projects where we've ordered plant, the plant is being received. The plant is being received, but it's actually sitting in Brisbane and you've got the floods or the plant. So you don't actually see that as actual as that comes through. With the other projects there, so you've mentioned, is that budget going to go up for next year as a cause of that carryover? So initially it will go up. However, Council does a third quarter budget review. And as part of that third quarter budget review, those projects are reassessed and the budget is reassessed at that point in time. So we have just undergone a third quarter budget review at this point in time. Is it all right if I just stand next to you? Then we don't have to travel.
Yeah, so my question is, you're saying that you can't accrue the money to next year, so you're not going to get the project done. We know, okay, a dump truck can't turn up until next year, but you accrue the money normally over to the next year. You don't have to pay for it twice. So where's that money going from this year's budget that when you don't do that project, are you spending it somewhere else?
So for that particular, if you're giving an example of fleet, we actually have fleet in next year's budget, so there is 3.5 million in next year's budget.
This year's budget though. When you don't spend it this year, where does that money go?
So that particular project, so Shalaya can correct me if I'm wrong, if it's delivered by a certain date, we can accrue it back. So if it's delivered before and we can receipt it before that time, it can be accrued back. If for the particular project, if there's a carryover, so for example, what's one as an example at the moment? The MRF. So the materials recovery facility, that particular project is continuing through. So as that continues through, we capture changes at your quarterly budget reviews. So the project is going through, the budget goes through, but at a quarter budget review, we review the entire budget to see whether or not it is in line with what we can deliver. What can, this is painful, isn't it? We'll have to recharge again. What can be delivered. So as we go through, we're going to see where we're tracking with materials, where we're tracking with suppliers and contractors. So as Chalaya has mentioned, the process that we're going through right now is how can we efficiently deliver next year's budget? How can we efficiently deliver right now? So part of that is actually looking at packaging. Part of that is looking at collaborating with other councils. Part of that is chatting to other industries in the area and seeing if there's large projects. So you might be aware of projects that at the airport, the construction project at the airport, we'll be reaching out to the airport and saying, who do you have in town? Who are you procuring from? So we can go out at the same time and make a larger package. So we actually draw someone to the area to deliver the works.
So you were saying about seeking funding after you put the budget in. So you've got all the council spending capital projects at the moment.
That's not working.
At the moment, you've got capital funded projects by the council. You said after the budget, you go out still all year and seek funding. If you get $2 million worth funding that was previously paid for by the ratepayers, where does that $2 million go? Because today, Councillor McRae said in the monthly meeting, when asked about the $550,000, she said, oh, we can still seek funding and then we can use that next year to give a zero rate rise. So I was just wondering, if you're seeking, are you seeking funding for the year you're in? Because that doesn't make sense to me.
So when we seek funding, the funding can be for the following year. So the project itself could disappear until another year. So if we seek funding, then the funding actually goes to the funding year that it actually is delivered in. So what you'll find is, for example, building our regions. They might not make a decision for another 6 months, or they'll wait for an election. So that funding for that particular project, that gets changed to a different year.
What I'm trying to say is, if you get $550,000 in January, a grant for the Telstra Hill, where does now you've got a grant, we've already put $550,000 in on the budget, where's that going?
I'll have to, Chalaya?
I can help with that. So there's a couple of questions, or there's the way you've asked your question, I understand it in two ways. The first question is around our commitments. We've got a project this year, we can't finish it, we have to carry it forward. What does that look like in terms of the budget? So for accounting, the commitment occurs when we've signed the purchase order, it's been issued, we have a binding contract. So how the milestones are paid, that's what determines, or how milestones are delivered is what will determine what we do carry over. So what you see in our carryovers are already existing commitments to deliver projects. They already have the matching funding. So what happens is that when we carry a project over, the expenditure over, we also carry over the related portion of revenue so that it offsets within the year that the milestone is delivered. That's how it works. Then the second part is that around, yes, it's in the budget, you've got a capital grant this year. There's a number of options because the nature of grants is that sometimes you don't know what's going to be released out there. A lot of it is very opportunity based, so you do need to have some allocation or some projects planned in the pipeline, regardless of whether there's funding or not. So when we do have a project in the budget and there is funding released and we're eligible, first of all, what that means is that the portion that we no longer have to fund from the ratepayers' money just goes back into general revenue. Unfortunately, there are very few projects that are 100% funded. We do find that with most grants that are out there, you have to provide some sort of contribution. So this is where it does come in. So absolutely, we're going to be very aggressive with grants that are out there. We'll try by all means to apply for every grant that we can.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a couple of questions here that I see in the budget you've got $150,000 in 23-24 for solar panels. In 2021, you spent over $740,000, so $750,000 on electricity, right? So, and that was in COVID, so you're probably spending more now. Every house you drive past has got a solar panel on, trying to save a buck. You've got Civic Centre, back at Isa, Buchanan Park. Why not bring that $150,000 forward and then save 40% is about $288,000 and you're making, so we're actually making money, but you're holding off for another 3 years, and it doesn't matter about a plan, just get the solar panels on and save us money. So, because that's our money that we could be saving on ratepayers.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you've touched on that point, because I forgot to mention that one of the strategies that we've implemented this year, we've gone to the market and engaged a consultant to deliver an energy efficiency strategy for us. So again, looking at our utility bills, electricity bills, what this strategy will do is help us pinpoint exactly where we should be installing solar panels or investing in solar so that we maximize the return. So the scope of that work will be the consultant will go to each of our sites, audit our bills, see where our utilization is the highest, and see where we should be investing and provide that information to us. Because at the moment, if we go in blind, that could be money down the drain. We have to maximize the investment on any solar panels that we get. So absolutely, all of that work is in the pipeline.
Okay, but that's 2 years away, that work?
No. It's going to be delivered by the end of the financial year. So that's the plan. We will have a strategy, and we've put in there, we've allocated around $300,000 for them, $300,000, over the next couple of years, just to implement some of the strategies. And those are the good ones that we can get some grant funding for within the environmental services. That's if it's available. Oh, did you want to add? Just one of the projects, Director Renee just reminded me, we've got a project to install solar panels on the council buildings and the civic centre. So that is happening. It's in the Capital Works projects. For funding.
For funding. And I guess for me, I'm disappointed that we're not, and I've said this time and time again, we should be going for funding for all the buildings, not just those two. And I think we could be having an energy bill if we went along that way. And even things like energy efficient light bulbs and street lights, that should be a priority. We could, there's things that we could be tackling now that we already know. We don't need but I am really proud of the energy efficient plan that is coming up, and that's actually taken out of your environmental levy that you see on your rates. So I think that's $28, $29. So that money is what we're using to get this plan together to try and eventually save council money. And hopefully, if we can cut that energy bill in half, that's 1% of your rates will save. So for me, it's a matter of urgency.
If I can just mention to that too. So when we were talking about asset management plans and strategies, we need that plan before we go out and just put something on. We need that plan because we need to ensure that what we're putting on is the best for the community and is going to ensure that we are getting the best value for money as to what we put on. We want to put on a system that we can roll out. So we'd end up with a rollout program. So the program that we'd be getting from there, we'd ensure that we'd bring that back and we'd actually put it back into that programmed year. So what officers and have worked very hard on is putting project bids together for that 4 to 5 year program. From that 4 to 5 year program, we've applied that. So once we actually get that strategy will be absorbed and put it into the 4 to 5 year program. So it will be presented to council, ask council if they accept this program, and then that will be absorbed and put into that program. So once we have an asset management plan, once we have a strategy, it actually gets picked up and put into that 5 year program. It's not a stagnant document. It's not a document that we're saying this is the only thing we're going to be doing in 2 years. Each year the council reviews the council budget, and it goes through the same process with the community as well. Thank you.
I've got 3 quick ones, and it's just for the councillors, if you can give me your opinion. The fleet maintenance forecast, when I looked at the budget for this year, prior to this being released, was $2 million. You spent $3.5 million this year, and you've now got in the budget for $3.5 million. So that's $1.5 million difference, and you tell me your forecast. Can you tell me, and it then goes to 2.5 and 2 million. Can you just tell me how that bigger jump happened between 2 million?
Can I answer that? Is that okay?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
probably
go,
more for myself rather than the councillors. As Chalea has mentioned before, we have been reviewing the practices of our fleet replacement program. It hasn't been a good program in the past. So as part of that, we actually have a policy that's being developed and will be presented through to council for the replacement of our assets. Based on that draft that will be coming through to council, we have developed that program and is required for that budget to occur so that we can actually have the value for money for the assets that we have. This is in line with the Institute of Public Works, it's the Institute of Public Works standards. So we go through that. It's the exact same standards that other council utilises as well. So that's part of that asset management plan, and that's why we're looking at the amount of money that we've put forward.
Okay. The other one was, it was said in the papers, and 150,000 for, I couldn't see it for AFL, that you're going for a grant, which is great. But what happens if you don't get the grant? Then the ratepayers have to pay this 150,000. Is that correct? Because that's a Russian roulette with our money.
You've mentioned AFL. So
Yep.
what happened was council, I think a few years ago, had been offered a grant to improve the facilities at AFL. We went out again to see whether or not we could get that grant. This was presented at council and council resolved to meet the funding to deliver that project. What has happened at this point in time is that we are now seeking additional funding to cover the other 50% that council had resolved to meet under the RCIF funding round 2. So if we don't get that funding, again, that information is presented back to council whether or not we've received the funding or not. And the council decides whether or not we continue with the project. So it's not a locked-in deal as to whether or not the project is undertaken. That communication is always provided to council to make that decision.
Okay, so it's not locked in, it's just, if we don't get funding, then you go back to council and find out.
So it's the decision too as to whether or not we hand the funding back. So do we upgrade the facilities and have that support from AFL? So we've previously turned it down and not delivered. They've given us an opportunity again to take up the grant and deliver this funding, deliver this work. If we don't deliver it, then we would be handing that funding back again.
Sorry, I'll interrupt here, but is it an opportunity for us to give sport 150,000? I think it's an opportunity for that sport to get 150,000 and all up 300,000. And again, my problem is that it's not going through an ordinary meeting. It's put in the budget, and at the moment, I think we take it out of the budget because I'd love to not see it there in the budget. And if it does come to the budget, let's put it through an ordinary meeting. But again, 150,000 is something we could be saving the ratepayers, and if we're offering 150,000 to one sport, we should be offering it to every sport. I don't see it as an opportunity for us. I think it's and again, the resource funding is the toilets and showers for 13 sports. So if that does come in, it won't impact on council. But if it doesn't come in, then for me, it's a considerable amount to give one sport, and I don't think council's ever done that before. And please correct me if I'm wrong if there's another time when council's given a sport 150,000. And this is a sport without juniors, without women. And,
no, that's incorrect. It is with women, and juniors did fold a couple of years ago, but they do support a women's competition here.
Yeah. So what? 4 teams?
I couldn't tell you that, but I do know there are women playing.
So 4 teams where you've got soccer, we've got 500 members. You know, you've got
But they haven't got
hockey.
funding.
Yeah, but we're still paying for that. It doesn't, I really cringe. I hear, you know, shovel-ready projects, but you've got to put 200,000 in to start it. And, you know, sometimes these projects we don't even want, but we get seduced by this funding. And then you go, but then there's OPEX costs going forward for the next 10 years that we have to eat as well. So it might sound good at the time, but it's not. My final question, and then I'm going to hand it over.
Can I just answer that one? Sorry. So you've indicated, again, as I said, in relation to the AFL. In relation to the AFL, again, the project won't go forward. It will be presented back to council as to whether or not the project goes forward or not. Whether or not we receive the funding.
But not to an ordinary meeting.
Excuse me. So if the funding, we've applied for RCIF round 2 funding. If we're unsuccessful with that funding, we'll be, and that is for 13 sporting groups. It is the same type of work that has been offered.
Oh, no.
So basically, we're looking at change facilities. So the change room facilities would mean that we'd have greater inclusivity for women. So there would be a separate change room. There'd be, and that's across the sports that we've actually applied for under RCF round 2. What AFL Queensland have done is they've actually offered to co-contribute for that work as well. We haven't had that co-contribution from any other sport going forward and under the application as well. So what I'm saying is that we will be bringing back down to council. In relation to operational costs, correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, we did look at that. A lot of the operational costs will be sitting as part of the lease agreements for those sporting facilities. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, and this is that last question I'm trying to get to, but in saying about that funding for showers and toilets, I'm part of Concordia Junior Soccer. We didn't even know what that funding was about. I think they contacted council to find out what have we been put in for, you know, and it was about giving toilets. Hockey the same, they've got toilets, but they want to do something else. So I don't think they've been consulted. You've just put them into this funding to make 32 sports.
So we consulted them twice, so round 1 and round 2. I can take that on notice and provide it back to the group that undertook the consultancy, that you felt that it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I've talked to sports as well.
Thank you.
And I think it's fantastic to put it in, but I think that the thought was in sporting bodies, there's other priorities that they would have loved you to, you know, if you're going to spend this much money on their sport, that they would have said, oh, we would have loved this first, you know, not a shower or a toilet or something.
Okay. So we actually had to have shovel-ready. That was a shovel-ready project. So for have a shovel-ready project, you actually had to have the design for that work. For these particular shower, these shower and change room facilities, they are prefab units. So because they were prefab units, we could get over that shovel-ready side of things. Each of the sporting facilities could have applied themselves for different projects. So RCF round 2 was available for every single body to apply for. Council just took the opportunity to try and improve for the entire community and sought whether or not we could improve their facilities at the same time.
Okay, final one, and this is definitely for the councillors. Can you just tell me, because we've got the MICO board, so I can't find it in the budget, how much, and I believe fully that tourism is very, very important and we have to do everything. Can you tell me how much that we're propping up MICO board to do tourism in Mount Isa? And this is for the councillors.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to answer that. Thanks. Look, at this point in time, we're down to about 1.5 million, I think, that underwrites the entertainment facilities. The trade-off there is that if we were run by council, we would be spending that money in any case, and the vehicle that's been chosen over the last possibly 8 or 9 years, or maybe longer, is that they wanted to do it through a separate company and put the money through there to operate and run the facilities at a lower cost, and I believe that's been achieved. There are some review work going on at the moment, and it may change going forward in the next 12 months. Sorry about my back, I'm just trying to lean into this microphone. But we're just waiting for that to unfold now, and I think probably within the next few months we'll have the model revised. Yeah.
And when will we how will you break even? What's the plan to break even? So we don't have to pay 1.5 million.
Historically, across all councils everywhere, they do run facilities, and you'd go a long way to find one that was making a lot of money for a council. They are underwritten by councils, but they are things that, rightly or wrongly, have been wanted by the communities at different times, and they've been underwritten for the cost of operating and running those facilities. And, you know, the case in point is the Rodeo Arena. You know, we underwrite the Buchanan Park and that for a certain amount of money every year. You know, our options are we either have it or we don't have it. And I think you can quickly see what the answer to that is. And it's a similar case with the Civic Centre. Every council that I know of has a Civic Centre or a civic theatre or something that they run and underwrite for the community. You would go a long way to find one that would be making any money out of one of those things. They are, you know, they are money sinks. And indeed, I'll point to the town swimming pool as another one. We support that and prop that up quite significantly every year so that the community can gain the benefit from it. So happy to hear options, but at this point in time, they're facilities that the council has to run one way or another. The MICO model is just a vehicle for running them, and it too is audited strongly along with the council figures each year.
Can I just add that it's really good when you come to a community session and there's lots of questions from the public, so thank you for that. I just wanted to add that what drives investment in assets or acquisitions or capital works projects is compliance, having to make sure that everything that we have for assets meets the current standards. Maintenance as well, when you find that the cost of maintaining the asset, ongoing maintenance exceeds the value of the assets, then you go in and intervene. But the other big driver for us is community, the feedback that we get, the demand from the community. So again, I encourage you, the list of projects that have been put forward in the draft budget, give us the feedback. If it's not something that you would like to see happen or you need some more information around why that project has been put in the budget, either for compliance or demand driven, please put the submission in and we can provide some answers for you. We encourage you to do that. All right, any other questions or comments?
Broncos are playing soon, Luke.
Beg your pardon?
The Broncos are playing soon.
I'm a Roosters man. I promise this might be, as I said, might be the last question for this evening. COVID has been a fantastic panacea at times for business to cover all the ills of life. Part of this, my question relates to you, Graham, for major projects. I'm interested to know, there's a small provision of a couple of $1 million presented in the budget, but I'm interested to know, with the forward projects, what contingencies have been set aside in case you have ongoing problems with contractors completing their obligation, not finding the equipment on time, not delivering the project on time, and then find that we've got non-performance penalty issues and how that impacts upon council and future surplus. And before you do answer that, this part of the question also relates to you, Chalea, as Director of the Financial Area. In the $65 million surplus, how much of that is sort of accumulated past funding that hasn't succeeded? So maybe both of you can share the microphone and deal with it.
I'll just answer initially, Luke, if that's okay, and I'll hand over to Graham if you'd like to add. So the cost estimates that have been put forward are high-level cost estimates. We're going through a refinement at the moment to ensure that the final budget that goes through to council is more accurate. The general contingency you put in is you put in 30%. However, at the moment, depending in the environment, you'd be putting in a lot more. So at the moment, the figures that you see are estimates. What we're doing is working on the background on business cases and business briefs for these particular projects so that they are more accurate. Does that answer your question, Luke? And I can hand it over to Shalaya if you'd like some more information.
Look, it does. Thank you very much, Renee. I've been the bank of mum and dad for my kids for quite a few years, and I'm glad to say in a way that I'm totally divested, stripped bare in other words. Thank you for that.
If I can add to Renee's comments there, absolutely right. One of the things that we're experiencing, if suppliers come to the table and decide to procure for us, we can see that they're nervous about some of those milestones and the capacity to deliver. What that means is that negotiating contracts takes a lot longer because of the rise and fall conditions or the clauses around the rise and fall. A good example is our MRF. So all the equipment is coming from overseas. With that, you've got delivery times impacted by COVID because of shipping costs themselves. You've also got foreign exchange variations or fluctuations that you hit. So one of the things that we've done is that we've allowed for some flexibility around delivery. So some of those penalties that you normally see around delivery times, we've had to be flexible because that's the only way to survive in this environment. We've also had to put a ceiling on the fluctuations so that we also make sure that council doesn't wear the entire cost of, for example, foreign exchange and so on. So what that means for the supplier is that once we lock in a contract, they should purchase the materials and we should pay for those materials immediately. And that's what we've done, just to make sure that we don't experience that big fluctuation. And just circling back to your initial question, Luke, were you asking about the revenue? Could you just repeat that question for me?
I noticed a declaration of 65 million held in surplus funds. Correct?
No.
There was someone passed a comment that there was $65 million in surplus funds at present.
Cash reserve.
Ah, cash balance, liquid cash in the bank.
Oh, it's liquid cash. I'm sorry. I was perhaps wondering whether there was funding buried within the cash reserves. Thank you. We've done well. The equipment that's coming, we all know that Russia is a very proficient manufacturer of heavy-duty equipment. Do we know anything there?
Bob? Sorry, I didn't miss the name of the supplier. Could you repeat?
Sorry?
When you're dealing with your suppliers, your contractors, are you investigating from where they're sourcing the heavy-duty equipment that you require?
That's part of the process, yes. So as part of the procurement process, we ask a number of those questions, yes.
Do we have any foreign exchange risk on those items, and particularly with relation to very heavy-duty equipment, componentry?
Absolutely. So one of the big pieces of equipment for the MRF is coming from Canada, and there is that fluctuation. The other part, and forgive me for my geography, but is coming from Europe. So it might be Germany, I think. Yeah, Germany, absolutely. So there is that price fluctuation as well. So those are the two foreign exchange exposures that we have, and we've capped it. The smart water meters are coming from Germany as well.
I might just say, as an aside to the smart water meters, fantastic job. And in relation to council doing work in a timely fashion, I had an issue with leaking taps one morning. By the time I got home in the afternoon, it was done. So I went out and bought a lotto ticket.
Well, that's some nice
thank you, Luke,
feedback.
and I'll
Thank
make
you.
sure I provide that feedback to the team, so I greatly appreciate that. In relation, just adding some more in relation to smart meters, because we really only just touched on it, and although we do add it fairly frequently in our monthly reports, there has been a delay in actually receiving those smart meters, and that has been taken into account in that contract as well. There is a delay throughout the world trying to get smart meters. There is a delay with chips, and I'm sure you've all heard of that one, microchips, and all the smart meters have that within them. We have a slot in the manufacturer, the delivery of that, but there's just no absolute set delivery time at this point. We are working month to month with the supplier of those meters, because they are trying to get the componentry to actually build the meter themselves, and so we can roll those out in community. Thank you, Luke.
Back end of that question.
Luke, is it all right if we just go back to someone else and then we can come back to you?
There are, but for this particular one, because we knew there was going to be issues, there was a back and forth between lawyers and lawyers and lawyers and lawyers, and as you can imagine, lawyers won, but we had to ensure that they were happy with the contract terms as well as us. So it was included as part of that, yes.
Just want to understand the infrastructure of MRF. That first infrastructure that was put into place, do you believe as council, as City Council, that the money spent there was justified?
Can I answer that? Look, the MRF is something that's pretty much thrust upon us, and we're sort of in that place where we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. So it is very expensive, and it is really going to cost ratepayers. And that's one thing that I think when I first got in, and we actually got the funding for the MRF before we actually got the briefing on the MRF. And I think there wasn't a pin could drop when we realised how much it was going to impact on the budget. But recycling is the way of the future, and if we don't recycle, we'll be hit with levies that will eventually be as costly. So it is a real tough one with the MRF, and I just wish it was a lot cheaper. But Shalaya, if you'd like to add some more to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. One of the other things that we have to look at is that as a local government, City of Mount Isa, we're one of the few local governments that does not recycle, which is a shame because it means everything goes to landfill. So we're not doing enough to divert or to add to the environmental sustainability generally. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to be the flagship, because there's other smaller local governments around us that cannot make an investment. We were very fortunate. We did get some seed funding. Yes, there is some council contribution, but there's also a market there for waste, and there's an opportunity for us there. So you have to look at both ends, and as when I wear the hat of the environmental manager, I have to consider that as well. So it does come at a cost, but you offset it against the waste levy as well. So if you can save some of those waste levy payments by taking everything to landfill, recycle and reuse, it's better for the earth, for the environment as well.
Through the chair, I'd just like to add that one of the biggest things that the community has been, during consultations too, is about the efforts that Mount Isa City Council make for recycling, and so that sort of stuff is very prominent within the community thinking as well. Everybody wants to see recycling, and I'll concur with some comments made by the Mayor already that the way of the future for local governments is around recycling. We won't have a choice going forward, otherwise it will cost us enormous amounts of money, and all our research and the indicators for that from all governments and even the way the world is heading is that the councils recycling is going to be as big as sewage as part of council delivery.
And can I just add to that? I concur with the Deputy Mayor. So we put out a lot of surveys and we try to engage with the community every chance we get. And sometimes we don't get many people get back to us. In fact, when we were looking for a name for the 23rd of February, which is 100 years, only one person actually come back to the survey, which is now, I think I can officially say that we're calling it Mount Isa Day. So next year on the 23rd of February, Mount Isa Day. So, but when we put this one out for recycling, we got over 900 responses to our survey. So it just showed us how keen our community is to recycle. So we all took notice of that.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a second stage happening down there at the moment, is that correct? Like,
At the MRF? Yes, so there's a number of changes or improvements that we're looking at with regards to the waste management generally. What we need is to ensure that, first of all, we meet compliance, because when you're running a landfill, one of the biggest risks is the non-compliance, because you end up harm to the public as well. There's potential for risk to life as well. So we're looking at that. So we've done some master planning around the site just to make sure that we are compliant, we meet the regulations, and also for the community, it's actually safe for you to actually use the landfill, and we have oversight of the entire facility. We also want to make sure that with the additional investment of the MRF, we ensure that we have that separation between the operators and the public as well to ensure safety. So one of the investments that recently was done was the transfer station. So the aim of that transfer station is that we want to make sure that the public do not end up on the landfill. If they can leave all their materials at the transfer station and our operators actually take it to the landfill. What that does for us is that we can monitor contamination, which is a compliance matter. We can also have oversight. Because of the landscape of the landfill, you can't see when somebody is, when a member of the public is at the landfill and they're interacting with heavy plant and equipment, which should not be the case. So those are some of the improvements. If we can bring the public to the front and make sure we have visibility of what's happening, be able to guide them as well. So you will start to see a lot of improvements with the waste management facility as well, and how we provide that service to the public.
Is there
Any
more
other questions?
No.
No.
Okay, well, look, I just want to thank everyone who took the time to come here today. It means a lot. This is for our community, and we have got that survey, so if you want to take it home and have a think about it and look at the budget, and I think if you do click online, you'll get a more detailed budget than the one we've just handed you. So if you want to have a better look, that's another way of doing it. Graham, you didn't have an opportunity to talk. Did you want to add anything? No? No? So I want to thank Graham, Renee and Chalea, because they've taken the time to go through this, and I think they've done a fantastic job of explaining where we're up to in the budget. And really, I know that budget time in any company is hard work, but at Mount Isa City Council, you can actually see the drain on the staff around budget time, because it really is, everyone's back here doing big hours trying to get the budget done. So big thank you to the council staff for that. I want to thank the councillors for coming here tonight. It's great to see you here. And again, if you're watching at home on this live stream, there are some forms you can fill out, and please have a look at the budget. You've got to the 31st of May.
Yes.
To come back to us, which is about 12 days.
Yeah, for 12 days.
12 days to come back to us with, we've got another question? Okay. No? And yes, so we'll be really happy to hear from you. So thank you everyone for coming today, and I look forward to hearing from everyone who